we will be discussing or covering one of the hottest topic in the industry, and that is cybersecurity. So before we begin, just as a reminder, a gentle reminder to mute all of your microphones so we will hear the discussion loud and clear. And if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to send it one in our chat box. I will be answering the question every now and then, and some of it will be discussed during our Q&A session. And lastly, feel free to give us a feedback after this session. I am Rosemary Calizo, the Sales Engineer of Access Communications in the Philippines. And with me is Philip, our Senior Consultant based in Singapore. So Philip, for today, will be discussing or sharing to us what really is this cybersecurity. What are those threats, vulnerabilities, and risks, and how Axis, with its technology and tools, can help you with the risk management, maintenance, and planning. So over to you, Philip.
Thank you, Rose. Good morning, everybody. Gentlemen, now I have to bring back to my first slide because I want to ask you this question before I tell you about cybersecurity. Now, you see the word trust, and then there is this new dimension in, of course, the topic that we are doing today. But in actual fact, let me ask you, in cybersecurity, or rather in security as a whole, I'm going to ask you this question, and all of you please listen very carefully. Can any bank, any government, any database, any secure vote, even Google, can they expect not to be hacked? Obviously not, isn't it? Now, so because every organization, every financial institution, even the United States, China, or wherever it is, the what they call penetration, the vulnerability will always be there as new codes are found to be discovered, to be able to break through, then you will get this manipulation. So now, similarly here, of course, Axis, we are talking about our devices. Today, I don't just talk about our camera, our solution, our devices. So there will be a time to come, regardless of whether you're using what kind of a mobile phone, right? You still need to update your operating system, your iOS and your Android, and so forth and so forth. So now even Microsoft, as you can see, are updating all our laptops and so forth periodically, right? Over and over again. Then we go on to this. So let's take a look at some of the important things. What is cybersecurity? Is it a feature? So obviously that's not, it's a process. So what do you mean by a process? It's important to understand that threat must be managed on a system level. Now, I'm not just saying this from what you call academic point of view. So the responsibility to secure the network is devices. When I talk about devices, of course, IoT devices where Axis is concerned, and the services it supports falls across the entire vendor supply chain. Do you agree with me or not? Now, as well as the end user organization, means your customer, yourself, SI partner distribution, right? Now, it falls across people, all the processes and technology. So now, you find that it's not just only the bank problem, but it's the whole country. If your provident fund, if your employee country database is been breached, now the government is also responsible. You guys are also responsible, everyone, including your mayor and so forth. Now, that means technology and features are important, right? As you know, we go into even 5G very soon, and can be used as security controls on a network, but will not, listen very carefully, but will not, I repeat, eliminate. Can you all please mute, please? but will not eliminate all risks or threats, right? So now then I will show you in this what you call another about 40 minutes to 45 minutes, a valid statement that it is used to process. What it doesn't define, because I'm talking about a process, right? Which part of the process? While it may be easy to say that ultimately it's the end user who should be doing it, but is that true? Particularly if the system is designed by someone else like the integrator. They put all the system together and they are going to be responsible as well, right? So now let's take a look. Let's open the Pandora box and say, you have what you call the highlight here, cyber threats and legislation. Well, I won't go through all this. We'll definitely touch base on that very soon. Now, let's take a look at the landscape. What sort of landscape are we talking about? I think these are very common. We have a lot from Asia also. While you find the CNN, Apple got hacked, New York Times. Now, I don't want to repeat all this. On the right-hand side, you get wired Chinese hacking. So if you move down the chain, then here are some more detailed one. I have even some Asia one. Asia one where you can find that there are some reported North Korea hacking, and then there's also Russia and so forth. And there are many instances where some of our Southeast Asian, what you call government got held ransom to. For US, these are published, right? As you can see here, Texas, City of Alabama, and you can go on and on and on. All right. I go on to my next slide. Then now let's take a look. Are they always used incorrectly, the cyber terms? When we talk about the word cyber, means space, isn't it? Security means to secure. Now, are these terms used not right? I'm going to explain this in more than just 1 minute. Now, vulnerability is an issue. Definitely, they're found in the code. Code of what? Code of anything. It could be your dongle. It could be any kind of password you set, or even your facial recognition. That's the code. And listen very carefully, and that could be potentially be exploited. Yes or no? Obviously, the answer is affirmative in the former, right? So all software, firmware will have vulnerabilities over time. When I say all means everything, Microsoft, Google, and all the IoT devices brand. So in many of a day-to-day conversation, people think vulnerability and exploits are one and the same. This is not true. They are not one and the same. Example, let me ask you. Google will not pay you $300 to $500 if you find a vulnerability with their browser. You know how much they'll be paying you? 30 to 50,000 for a Google Chrome exploit. If you can find this now, they are not challenging you to go and patch up their Chrome, but there are many research scientists. If they're able to penetrate those big multinational corporation organization code, they will be usually what they call rewarded. And these people, they do it because of the human reasons, meaning that bank ABC, I found this. And then the bank will say, thank you very much for telling us that, this is something, we will patch it. And then they will do something to the researcher, whatever it is. So what is a backdoor? Backdoor is exactly what it is, a backdoor. In most cases, when the software firmware is in development, some of these are used just to get back into something. If you coded something wrong from the beginning, in the middle, when you do the maintenance, think very carefully. Now, I know a lot of you guys out there are technical people. How does the backdoor became about. We are talking a lot about cyber. We are talking a lot about firmware and software, something that we only can put in our imagination. But physically, when you build a lock, when you build a door, if it's not properly constructed, yeah, so that's a back door, giving you that kind of analogy. Now, long before quality assurance, this should be removed. Easier said than done, isn't it? So, do we have backdoor in our product? I often get asked, hey, I forgot my root account password. So now you don't find that, we put any password in our devices. You go and put the password yourself. So do you have a default or backdoor one? I think you know, right? There's a lot of brand out there, admin, then you go in. Now, what does that mean? So do you have to do a factory default? After you do a factory default, it is still admin. Now, let me get on to this. Understanding, yes. So we need to know the vulnerability, the threats, and the risks. Now, let's start. I am going to start with the threat. So threat, you get threatened because of livelihood or harmful cyber attack. So vulnerability, example, WannaCry ransomware. You get ransom. I mean, someone try to kidnap you and then they demand the money, right? This is in cyber terms. Now, then after the threat, then let's go on to what you call asset. So what you're trying to protect, what is important to you, your endpoint, right? The important things to you. Is it a lot of SMB, small medium business? They are not really cautious about vulnerability in cyberspace because to them the bread and butter revenue is more important than anything to pay their staff and so forth, right? So now we go on to the bottom left, which is the vulnerability. Known unknown, they can be exploited. All right, especially Windows OS is very important. Your mobile phone operating system, whenever Google and Google services are two different things, right? Android, you have your Android 10 today. That is Android, if I'm talking about example. So in Axis firmware, it's the same. Latest firmware, active firmware, long-term services. I'll go into that later on, right? So then in the end, there's a risk, impact of loss, asset to the business. Example, of course, it will get your fire, ventilation, heating, control, and even your hospital MRI machine could be compromised, right? Now I go on down to next. Average time, let's talk about time from vulnerability to exploitation. Usually hackers will only take about 1 week. 1 week and they're into your door. Quite frightening, isn't it? Right? Now, window of vulnerability, exploitation by threats, meaning you have left your organization open. Some IoT devices, be they camera, be they whatever door access that you have, or speakers or etc. So once when it's manufactured, it is 120 days average time that the vulnerability patch is applied. Because if you don't do anything within this 120, I guarantee you it will be penetrated. So you know why Axis has a lot of firmware upgrade? So the cyber risk is always high, but it's important to note that even when it's discovered, that the exploitation rate is still low. Now, the exploitation rate rises sharply after the, what you call this, cybersecurity attack is reported. So the bad actors are good, but they also go through the new cyber and see which one's worth weaponizing because they want to make the best use of window of vulnerability. So 120 days is the average, right? Now, later on, I'll talk about Axis Device Manager. Now, this is a tool to keep your access devices up to date and patch, and how this is important of life cycle management. Okay. So, vulnerability scan. Each time you start up your laptop, Trend Micro or whatever security antivirus software that you load onto your laptop, it does a scan. Right? Give you an example. So does. So what do they do? What they are not. So vulnerability scans are used by most to scan your network endpoint. I don't want to go into all these details because it will take up too much time of explanation, right? So then you are actually looking at this. You get a summary. Vulnerabilities by severity. What is critical, what is severe, and what is moderate. There's not enough historical data to display overall asset trend. Depending on if you are looking at 8 minutes, of course, that will not be really enough. Incidentally, this report represents an audit performed by NetPros. You can get it from the internet, Rapid 7 LLC. Right? These are containing confidential information at the state of your network type. Okay? Now, so if you go further down, you can even see the highest risk of vulnerabilities. On your left hand, it shows the criticality of the risk scores. This is an order score of product, however. So TLS untrusted, how many percent? All right. Then you'll see HTTP is enabled. And how will it affect your organization? So if Axis didn't and you were not using HTTPS, then how will you get to the web interface? Yes, you could use another software tool, all right, to enable, but is this reality? So the more you try and restrict, there will be some giveaway, right? You need to compromise something. Then you'll be maybe using Apache software, or Firefox and stuff like that. So the highest risk, what do you call this kind of a report, you could actually see it from the audit report itself. Now let's go on to the next one, which is how to mitigate. When we talk about mitigation, meaning to lower down the risk factor, like I said, we expect to be hacked, whether organization or the country, right? The whole world, in fact, it's just like now the virus attack. Is COVID-19 going to be the last one? No, certainly not. There will be another one coming. Just don't get afraid, all right? So what is the recommendation now? Because you can see that this is not good. Then we will talk about account policy. Now, as we go into account policy, as you know, the Axis account policy are getting more and more secure. And then our password policy also. So update and security policy. So I will go through these three of them. Account policy, who is allowed to access the system and what privileges should they get? Right? Sorry, I haven't finished. Now, that is very important. That is account policy. Then the password policy. All right, password policies are not only about password strength. Listen very carefully. Whenever we talk about password policy, we are always, our mind is totally fixed on strength. Wow, if you put a number, then capital letter, small letter, alphabet, different kind of character. When this vulnerability is known and the service is exposed, someone will eventually try to exploit it. So no matter how complicated you have, it will be done. So, but the strength of the password is to reduce the risk. You manage over time, compromise password, right? Then the third one, keeping your system up to date. Now, this new critical vulnerability may be discovered tomorrow, or can be done next month. So the vulnerability is known and the service is exposed. So what happens? Someone will eventually try to exploit it, all right? And then you go through the whole cycle again. But you see, if you do these three policy right, you cover about 80 to 90% of your risk, so thereby putting you in a better position, right? Next, we need to talk about life cycle. So when we talk about life cycle means getting the benefits. Because if we want to do a certain process, we must be able to know what are the benefits. And that's important. One of the biggest benefits is the ability to ensure that all of these devices have the same either level of security or security control enabled on all devices. Because hackers on accounting, at least one device may not be configured the same as all the others, right? They're not the same. Or maybe even the technician, the engineer may have been troubleshooting a problem. And then what happened? He forgot to enable security control back after correcting the issue. See? So it will allow either end user or integrators to develop standard, ensure they are pushed throughout the network for devices. Right? So you know what is actually on your network versus what you think is on your network. And that's very important. Ask your IT people. And last, you can lower costs by planning, moving into a replacement schedule, right? Here, I bring you Axis Device Manager, a very, what do you call, very useful tool to manage large network of Axis devices. So, this is the first step. Number one, you can consider security without knowing what you have. That's bad, isn't it? So this comes from the Axis Device Manager tool. And you get all this information, the serial number, the MAC address, they belong to the same. Now these are very handy because when you need to call into world-class tech support organization, you will need this information. Will you be able to have this at your fingertips when you are using this on your network? All right. Now, this information is also handy from a SI partner perspective when you hand over to the end user at the completion of your project. Access devices, but there are many different software, but they provide this type of information on other network devices too. Okay. So linking lifecycle management to cybersecurity. You see, here what I'm trying to do is we talk about lifecycle management. Then we want to link this back to cybersecurity. So how do we use this? So using the inventory that was created, right, in the device manager, now you can now begin to plan scheduling maintenance. Maintenance is very important on the system and have a process and a plan to get you and where you want to go. No day is like today, right? So your quality manufacturer will continue to update the product with IT hardware. But it's important to sync your camera firmware updates with what VMS that you have, both in your network as well as the camera. So you have to test the plan in the end. You're testing the plan is as important as you don't want to impact the production network if pushing out a lot of updates at the same time. Okay. So the next thing is that you schedule this, then you can do it maybe after midnight, right? Updating the firmware because I already spoke about why the importance of it. So there are bug and vulnerability patches. If they are discovered, it will be announced. And then the third thing is you will have your video management system on your network, be it access camera station or other third-party ADP type. So the service device spec versus a full releases, are they compatible? Very important, right? Now, then we move on to the second very important technology that we have in Axis. The first one is our device manager, right? Now we are talking about LTS firmware. This is long-term support, system integration, and cybersecurity. We are moving towards LTS. While this is common in IT, this has not been seen in the security industry before. I repeat myself. In the IT industry, this is common. But in the security industry, this has not been seen before. And we are pioneer in this. Okay. Now, the way it used to work was that we had many different versions in parallel, all with varying maintenance period and varying support, isn't it? Now, the challenge was that customers did not upgrade their devices as they were risking compatibility with VMS and analytics. So the yellow one, you can see there's a maintenance period. Then let's look at today's structure. Many overlapping levels and support for varying length. Now the challenges, what if there is a cyber bug? What if you want new features released in firmware? You have to upgrade. That's where long-term support comes in, isn't it? New firmware support life cycle. So we have the active track. The active track is when you don't want the cyber portion. You can still get your, right? This is how you choose between active or LTS. Frequent standard firmware releases with all the latest features per year. That is active. So the long-term one, LTS, releases that enable your system to get cyber patches without jeopardizing your VMS compatibility. At the same time, it will work for our VMS partners more efficient. So this way, you can focus on quality testing on these LTS releases and the latest firmware when you make your upgrade. So that means those who have on active, they have been what you call using old model, you can still continue to get that, right? Features upgrade and so forth. Now, in the test lab, let's take a look. This is just conceptually. I'm not going to go into detail. Who owns what part of the update process? So, common programs, particularly large or end user, there will be lab or place where all your network equipment is tested before the devices. The real question is who owns the lab? The end user or the SI, the partner, or both? Something that all of us need to ask ourselves, isn't it? Now, so linking lifecycle management to cybersecurity again, schedule or replacement, there's always a cost, isn't it? Which is the economic versus the hardware life cycle. So we know that replacement of product usually is about 5 to 7 years. And I don't understand some project asking for 10 years warranty. All right. So this will always vary. Every end user organization, they are unique. Each will have your own specific need. Don't expect your laptop to last till the day you start work, till you leave the company. All right. So that will not happen. So economic needs, new, better technology, they will come. After Windows 10 Professional, you'll go on to the next level. I don't know which version it is, but it will definitely come. Right. So, and then here we are actually looking at so-called benefits of lifecycle management, more benefits. Of course, we want to lower your total cost of ownership. At the same time, increase security and stability. Is there such a thing that you can do? And then better system performance. So what the expectation of the world, the organization and the country is that you want to pay either the same or lower, but to get better protection. Is there such a thing? So here we are trying to help our integrators with a message to take to the end user. You need to push this. The benefit to integrators is return of uh, monthly revenue. End user, of course, long term, your long term total cost of ownership, because your planning, your efficiency become better in the long term, right? You know when to replace your hardware, and you know also the predictable costs. Then greater system performance and stability. And next, of course, you have to give examples. So Axis tools for device management. We talk about device tools. So this is Axis camera management for integration and cybersecurity. Device manager. Axis device manager, if you take, they are really available, and this is at no cost. Download from our web. You just need to download and upgrade. Very easy to use, right? And they are for across domains, across WAN, not just your local area network, right? Now, you take a look at this simple, what you call illustration. If you have, for example, 200 devices on your network, if you need to install camera application, upgrade firmware, the devices need to be configured and then need to be cyber hardened. You need about taking through the web interface, whether Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, it will take you about 100 hours to do it, isn't it, one by one. If you are using the tools that we have, the device manager, in total is about 30 minutes, and that is for 200 devices. So I mean, you count the cost, you count the resources and the time, right? And I think this will definitely reduce a lot of the pain that the end user and the system integrator is going through today. Then we go on to other tools for success. Here we publish very widely on our web, axis.com. We have this what they call hardening guide, product security advisory. Right? So we in fact dedicated a portal in axis.com for product security. All right. So you can look at on our web. They are open. Now then we talk about the new capabilities. What are the new capabilities that Axis is going into? Yes. We have this one you call the lock on your right, ARPAC 7. ARPAC 7 is there, the processor, but we are having our ARPAC 8 come next year. So then this is a signed firmware, secure boot, TPM, trusted platform module, and our own Axis developed chip. I'm going to take you through again in a few more seconds of explanation, which is this. ARPAC chip. ARPAC 7. Now this has security hardware. And I'm going to say that Axis cameras with firmware 9.20 or later, they will have signed firmware. Now what does this mean? This ensures that only secure authorized firmware can be installed. Cameras with the new chip will also provide secure boot. Now, so secure boot which prevents booting of unauthorized firmware. Now here I have to illustrate. Picture, you have an OEM camera from company XYZ. Their firmware could be ABC XYZ. So It is not assigned firmware because I'm just giving you a piece of hardware supplied to you, 5,000 pieces. Then you go and do your own R&D and come up with your own firmware. So these are not signed. And then again, is this secure boot? Because once Axis put in our signed firmware and we secure boot, we reboot the system. You cannot put in your ABC or XYZ firmware. It just cannot go in. We lock the device. We lock the camera. That's where I show you this lock here. Right? Now, then next I want to highlight will be the Trusted Platform Module, TPM. Now, some cameras will also include a TPM now in Axis. Now, this is an extra level of secure storage for cryptographic keys and certificate. Now, there are some, many instances where we run analytics on our camera, and then the other one is edge storage. So TPM is to provide this extra level of secure, and we cryptographic it, what do you call, depending on AES 256 and special certificates. Right? And the last thing is that we develop our own chip according to our best practices for security and custom made for our product. Now, you can all read this and get this from our website white paper. Okay. Now, these enhanced security features are very important because if you look at other brands, right, you won't see this very common outside there. Sign firmware, avoid compromise. All right. Number one, don't ever buy OEM. You know why? If you get a car, please get an original car. Don't get an OEM car. It will drive you away somewhere, especially when you have autonomous vehicle, right? Next thing, now, secure booth. So you have all the details here. Protect against persistent tampering of firmware. Provide a way to recover from intrusion, right? Secure booth helps. Ensure that the system only runs authentic Axis approved firmware. Yeah, I don't want to read from the slides here, right? So gives you all the explanation. Then lastly, we have what they call Trusted Platform Module. It's actually a security chip. TPM, if you search on the Google, it's actually a data security chip that we place in our new camera, those with firmware 9.20 and above. Now, this protects certificates because your certificate can be exploited, right? HTTPS or whatever it is that you put in your camera. Now, and the server and the client need to know that it is a correct device it is communicating with. Very important, isn't it? And then you have your private key and your public key. So these credentials are secure in a secure manner. Now, I don't want to go into all the details because time doesn't really permit me. But lastly is that you can protect your secret exported from one device and then reused in another to perform advanced attacks. Now, TPM use case, government or some banking requirement, you must have this TPM, and they are FIPS 140-2 level 2. Very important if you go into some big government project, right? TPM. Okay. Now let's take a look at the secure supply chain. A bit on OEM and ODM. In contrast, you'll find that owner-developer companies, a company that develop your own hardware, then they give you the certification firmware, whatever it is, they will be much more accountable for its products and will manage processes to remedy this vulnerability. Axis approach is to product development is one which we consider cybersecurity at the very beginning, at the very stage of the process. Now, this includes using open source code. Yes, we still want to be open, and then we conduct our own internal code review. We audit it through a lot of testing, even with the end customer. Okay. Supply chain secure. So, a lot of organizations are implementing vendor risk management program. Yes, big organization, do you know that they look at Axis and study our risk management program? Your customer may be a big organization. Do you think that they look at other brand? There's so many other brand in the market, isn't it, for IP camera? Yes. What is their risk management? The what you call date on arrival, the DoD implemented, right? So how do they actually do that? Particular components like chipset, memory, do they use contract manufacturing? Who are your supply chain? So can they provide you what they call with security good of manufacturing, the software, firmware, etc. Do they know what other manufacturer that their devices rely on in their code? And I dare say, unfortunately, many Asian companies today here, they take cybersecurity not seriously because they don't look at this as a big threat. But I think in today's world, how many of you already encountered scam during the COVID time? You're very frustrated, isn't it? Partial lockdown and people still trying to scam you, trying to trick you into clicking this link or that link to get all the personal information from you. And sometimes it sounds so real. They put my prime minister as asking for Bitcoin investment. I mean, can you imagine that? So, any end user, customers are establishing a vendor risk management program. Yeah, the bigger companies will do that. And to map their supply chain. So great that companies providing this technical solution to our problem. But who are you actually dating, so to say, right? I mean, I'm using another analogy. What risk am I exposed by using this product? This also applies not just to our company security camera, but our home network devices, isn't it? A lot of us are using IP cameras at home now, right? Now in this slide, I'm proud to say if you buy an Axis camera, owning the R&D for a camera means that whatever you print on the outside of the camera is also in the inside. This is what most people would expect in the first place. You get what you see, not you get what you don't see what's inside. That's not too comforting, isn't it? Now lastly, yeah, so this is another portion when you get an Axis camera, right? You buy an Axis camera. Lastly, in summary, I want to highlight that, uh, we are committed to 100% of cybersecurity. And then there are this, what they call vulnerability equals to exploit. Exploitation are always there all the time, even as I speak now. Now, we don't have backdoors in our product, right? Because once you have backdoor, some of the example of backdoor is the minute you OEM, ODM, you're actually creating a backdoor. The minute you have admin as your lock-in, that's a backdoor. So end user is the ultimate stakeholder, and we have to protect the end user because the last part of holding the ball will be the end user. Then we go on to the next category. Follow these simple 3 best practices. They will mitigate 95% of your risk. Example, account policy. I can go through review this on another session in detail. Password policy is easy, and then you need to keep system up to date. Yes. Second, lastly, supply chain, yes, secure them. Know who and where you're buying from. Have a program. Please plan and study who are your supplier, who are the brand that you're buying from. And lastly, we have the tools. We have the tools and the people with the knowledge to help you SI, DISTI partners, and the end user. Right? So now I have come to this stage where I have some simple Q&A just to test you. In the first place, before I open this up to the big Q&A, any question that you're not able to answer, please direct them to Axis and direct them to me, to Rose. Maybe what I could ask you in general now, because we have this IoT and then Mirai boot encryption, who can, why, then the big question mark, what if white hat hackers? Maybe I ask the question here to make you a bit easier. The FAQ, what about competitors and their weaknesses? Don't put this on the screen. Of course, I'm not going to do that. We will not comment on competitors' product or any disclosed vulnerabilities that they may have because that's not professional. We focus on our own offering. Now, my question is IoT secure? Yes, IoT secure. Now, answer this, for the sake of the big audience like that, depends on the maturity of the manufacturer, installers, and end customer. It's easy to add too much exposure, which increases the risk. Note that not everything that connects to a network is IoT. An IoT device has to be connected to Ethernet, right? To the Ethernet that we are using very much now as we work from home. And they need to be interact with other services connected to the Internet. So that's very important. Then you may say that some other infection, like, I don't know whether you have heard of Shodan. Shodan is a web crawler search engine that tries to identify what type of device is behind a public IP address. So you can use this service, you can find many Axis product or any other brand. Sometimes using the default password, that's how they go behind the back door. All right. And lastly, Mirai boot, web hat hackers, and of course, then you talk about what about encryption? Some people may think encryption will harden the camera or the VMS. Is this really true? No, it does not. Encryption should be applied when data is sent on unsecure network. Internet is definitely unsecure. Now you hear it. The Ethernet is not secure. Okay. Now, some critical customers classify their entire private network as insecure, even their VPN. Now, Axis, we have noticed that encryption is most often used due to policies or regulation. So lastly, before I go to the open Q&A, is this. We implemented 802.1x. What is this? It's a network protection infrastructure designed to prevent unauthorized devices on the network. So operating 802.1x is an investment. Sure. It requires you manage switch and additional servers. All right. So depending on your infrastructure, you may need a special server, CA or radius server. Go into a bit more detail when you come to our what they call classroom training. So now I will really go on to this next one, which is the Q&A.
Hey, Philip, we have
Yes.
few questions and from the chat box. So the first one is, does Axis comply or does have a certification for cybersecurity standards?
Okay. Thank you, Rose, for the first question. Now, audience, ladies and gentlemen, I get asked this many times, several times. You see in my second slide. Now, cybersecurity is a process. It's not a product. When you talk about Axis camera or our devices end-to-end solution, it is what you call a complete product. And there is no cybersecurity certificate to verify that any brand you can find that this is cyber label. So to answer in short, there is no such certification in the industry. Yes, you have a cybersecurity certification for IT, all right? IT, whether it's the database, the network, your switches, and so forth. But in the camera, because the camera, you depend on other, what you call, other variables, like your network, your overhead infrastructure, right? Then you have your VMS coming in. So when we protect our devices with signed firmware, secure boot, TPM, etc., with LTS, that is more or less like I bundle it so much. 80 to 90%, I'm already very secure. The other 10 to 20% is actually up there for you to close the gap. End user doesn't close the gap, I can lock the whole camera until no one can even access it. Then what's the point? All right? Yeah. That's my
Okay.
answer.
Yeah. So I just want to add up to the Philip's answer. So in general process of the cybersecurity, there is no a standard that we can, or the, like, for example, certifying body that we can consider with, but the technology that we use in our cameras are compliant to the standard. So for example, the TPM. So TPM is not an access product. It's a trusted platform module. It is a technology, it is a standard. So we are doing that one, we are complying, we are certified to use that standard. So another thing is, for example, if we patch in or we use our, we update our firmwares using, for example, the Apache or the OpenSSL, we comply to what the National Institute of Standard and Technology required. So those technology that has really a standard giving body that are monitoring with, we are complying to that one. But the whole process of putting cybersecurity features or measures in your system, that is dependent on your end user requirements, their IT policy, and so on. So I hope that would clear out this question. Okay, the second one is, does Axis experience any real life cyber attack on its system? Do we have Philip have
Yes,
a real life
I
experience on Axis?
I must say that we did publish known vulnerabilities. There are cases, not just the last 2 years, but even before that. There are certain firmware of ours where someone has actually managed to get in, either through. That's why today you don't find. We take out the telnet, we take out the FTP. So as time goes, I can even tell you, someone will discover HTTPS how to get in. So to answer your question in short is yes, in the past, there are cases where our devices has been exploited, but we publish it. The important thing is that we make it known. That means we let the whole community and known, and we publish on our website which model, under which firmware this has been discovered. And then not only that, we give you the solution, the remedy. The option is to upgrade this firmware to this patch. And it's just like what Microsoft used to tell you. We have a new patch. Here is the release notes, why we do it. Right?
And then
Over
the
to you
next,
now.
okay, and the next question is there any real life scenario that Axis ever implemented in Indonesia? You can answer this one since you're covering Indonesia for quite a while.
No specific country in general. When I say about the exploitation that we have experienced, it is actually globally. We have not come across any Indonesian hacking our camera yet. Please, if you have done so successfully, let me know. I want to let my HQ know, and then we will really thank you, and we will patch it, with a public, what they call, publication.
So another question is there any mitigation from Axis with regards to zero-day attacks such as vulnerabilities that has not been addressed by security patch, and how long does it take for Axis to address this one?
You see, the minute when we put our product out, we expect 120 days. That is the longest you can last before a vulnerability will happen. Now, in answering the question, we have a lot of models coming up even before you can even recognize the present model. So that will change not just the firmware but the whole product itself. And the interval of our firmware upgrade is also almost like every 2 months, 2.5 months. So we don't give a chance when we suspect something is not very right with our code as we go along. We increase the cyber, what you call, level. We think that this is not good. The coding is not done in such a way that the secret is too few. We redo it. We make the complexity even more secure, apply more AES to it. Yes. Okay.
And then how about data center? What is the key point that we must concern and explain clearly to the client?
Now, for data center, this is a very, very sensitive key area. But in all the big brand who has, whether it's EMC or Dell, IBM or Cisco, this data center is, I would say, one of the highest level because they have that kind of certification. And I can dare tell you, Axis, I'm in no position to advise you on your data center. When our camera recording goes into your data center, it's guaranteed by them that this is secure. And what I can say is that our camera, before the recording is even transferred to the data center, it can be secured on our end, right? We have all the encryption on our end to make it HTTPS secure and transfer over in the network. As you know, in the network, it's never secure. A big ocean out there, right? And when your data center receive it,
Yeah.
they will have their own locks.
Okay. To add on Philip's answer to that about the data center. So normally the data center, they are the brain of the IT operations of one organization. So they have the most complicated plans or actions with regards to cybersecurity. What we can commit to the people and the data centers or the IT people that we are talking to is that our cameras or our devices are compliant to the standards that they may require. So for example, if ever they want to disable, they require that their whole system will disable the certain ports, then we can do that. We can comply. If they want that all of their product or all of their IoT system connected to their data center should have an IO2 triple compliance, then we can also do that one. If they would require a signed certificates, we can also do that one. So what we can give assurance to them is what would be the policy that they would be requiring from the access camera or for their surveillance as a whole is we can comply to that. But of course, we have to make sure that all the components, not just only the cameras, but also the VMS, the switches can comply as well. So that would be for the question and answer portion. So if you have more questions, feel free to email to us. So I'll be putting in my email address and also Philip. And then Philip, on the next slide, please.
Yes.
So we have
here, hang on, yes.
So we are happy to announce our winner from the last webinar. So with the end-to-end solution topic. So Ms. Nicole of i3 Technologies, congratulations, and you won Axis M3116 LBE. So we will be emailing you shortly on how to to claim your prize. And for the last part, we would require each of you to participate again for our lucky draw. So we will not be, we have a, sorry, we have a link that we'll be putting in your, in the chat box. So please answer and this one. So we would appreciate if everyone would participate in this. So Philip, on the last slide, please.
Yes. So we come to the end of the session. Yeah, thank you very much for your time. I believe that you can take some useful takeaways from this session. Yeah. Over to you, Rose.
Yeah. With regards to the link that I sent on the chat box, we will be having 3 lucky winners of our Access Care kit. So please participate on this one, and also feel free to give us some feedback with regards to this session and the previous session as well.
Wait, Rose, is there a lucky draw slides?
Yes, on the last part should be.
Which one? Is there a lucky draw slides for today?
Yes. No, not that one. Yeah.
So today there's not one, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
we have 3 Access Care kit to be given away to those who participated on the link or into the question that we sent on the chat box.
Okay, good. Yeah. Will do.
So the presentation materials for today, we will be sharing this one. So to help you out in the mitigation and also the risk management of your project. So we will sending some information on how to get this in your email.
Okay, good. So, ladies and gentlemen, and Rose, shall we say goodbye and end to this session?
Yes.
Or is there anything to add?
Nothing more from my side. Thank you very much for coming. If you have questions, feel free to email us or email any of the activities.
Yes. Right, have a good day, everybody. Yeah. Goodbye. See you again.